Hey, everybody, welcome back. Words number 25. We are at number 25. I'm Emily Moyer, and Dani Katz is with me. And we're going to just jump right in because, we don't want to lose the good stuff in the beginning. But just before we do that, I just wanted to let people know that there's a shifting going on for how I'm doing things. So this is the Emily Moyer YouTube channel. There'll be all of my content will always be here. Some of my content will be appearing on the Off Planet Media YouTube channel, but make sure if you're watching this here that you subscribe here because some things will only be here. This is also generally available on Dani's YouTube channel as well, which is Dani Katz, right? Or is it Words Are Matter?
No, it's Words Are Matter, letter R. But I think if you type in my name, I don't know, it depends on how much I'm being shadow banned on what day.
Yeah. So be subscribed here, be subscribed to her channel, be subscribed to Off Planet Media. Everything will be spread out amongst things, but just make sure we're spreading stuff everywhere just for safety's sake and whatever here. So anyway, with that, on with the show here, Dani. We're going to kind of talk about how our position as we start to observe these things. The longer we observe them, our positions shift on them, but we're also watching the position of the players, the actors shift sort of midstream here. And you were just about to start to explain to me what's going on in New Mexico that I wasn't aware of. So why don't you tell us what's happening there? Tell us what was happening and then what is happening now.
Okay, so New Mexico, as far as what was happening, I think it was pretty standard. Like they shut down non-essential businesses as though they can decide what's essential and what isn't. But it was sort of, there wasn't a lot of continuity to that. Like Truth or Consequences kept some of their hot springs open because they decided that health and wellness was, they stood up and said, no, we're not shutting down. Health and wellness is essential. And the governor said, okay. No one tried that in Santa Fe. Santa Fe feels like there's a lot of like kowtowing to this early on. So we were shut down. We didn't have as big a cop presence as they had in Taos. Something weird is going on in Taos. Taos had a curfew. Taos has more of a police presence.
Wait, hold on. I'm just getting confused real fast about whether we're talking about shutdowns after COVID or after riots.
The COVID.
Okay.
But Taos also has police completely surrounding the Taos Pueblo. And now I hear they have Antifa. They did bus Antifa into Taos after the riots, but we don't have them here. So I don't know what that's about. Last week, the city council, so like 2 weeks ago, they made masks mandatory for the state, but I didn't see any enforcement.
But that's really weird that they're making it mandatory when other states where it's been mandatory are starting to lift it.
Well, my sense is that, and I'll get into it more, but the more I'm digging back into Yuri Bezmenov, as I told you, I'm really diving into like this communism thing and it's staged for normalization. Also, I think it has something to do with the fact that New Mexico has SpaceX here. The Los Alamos lab. I think the stuff that was going on in Gallup has to do with like whatever underground equipment you're going to use to project the hologram of the mothership, either before Hillary testifies, which no mainstream media, not one, has reported on, or before the election. But I think that New Mexico, I think that's what's going on with the fuckery here. Plus our governor is a globalist who allegedly was being primed to run as vice president. I don't know if it was under Clinton or whatnot.
Who's the governor again?
Sorry?
Who's the governor?
Michelle Lujan Phillips, maybe?
Okay.
And then our mayor is Alan Weber. So Alan Weber came out of, first he was running the Harvard Business Review, and that's all tied in with like the Gates, that clan, Club of Rome, all of that. And then he was in the political scene in Seattle. And Seattle, as we know, is a nexus for the democratic socialism stuff. So my sense is that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's corruption or just stupidity. But last week, the city council passed an ordinance that anyone who is caught outside of their home without a mask is going to be fined $50. So that was crazy. I checked out the city council meeting, which was super long and boring. 9 people spoke out about it. I didn't know that they were having it, or it would have been 10. While the people were speaking about it, the mayor just ate and chewed a sandwich. No one really paid attention. And then they passed this egregiously unconstitutional, disgusting ordinance. So as I was telling you before we jumped in, it went from a month of documentary research, and now I'm in putting together, all the pieces to shut this nonsense down.
Okay, so this is interesting because, in the early week, well, in lots of this period of time dealing with the virus that we've been dealing with, you were encouraging
the virus of control.
The virus of control. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right. But the one that they were pretending was a health-related issue, which we're on to a different virus. Now, both of them are mind control viruses, but one is behavioral and other is supposedly health or whatever, right?
Correct.
But, you were feeling more freedom there than it seemed like we were having here. And so you were encouraging all of your friends from Los Angeles to come for a visit there, right? And so one of the things that and of course, like when things get crazy here and it seems like super tyrannical, police statey, whatever, I was starting to look at other places. Like, okay, like I was very, like I've been watching these operations for long enough now that like my reactive button isn't primed for pushing anymore. Like I kind of pull back and wait and see what happens. But I was pretty early on keen on this idea that like, okay, I want to keep my eyes on the states that are like showing the most respect, both for personal freedom and for common sense, because that gets lost in all this, is how like respect for common sense is just gone, right? Like forget about like freedoms or legalities, just common sense, right? Like I know it's clearly not very common, but people are overlooking how much all of this is really an insult to our intelligence. It's obviously an insult to our freedoms, our liberty, our rights, but it's also an insult to our intelligence. And,
right.
And to me, like that, that annoys me almost more than the others. But I was careful because, okay, like there's a few states that seem like they're being pretty cool, pretty free, or they're remaining the most open or having the least restrictions. And like I've watched these people long enough that I understand their long games and their long plays. And I know that there is a tactic to try and get people to quickly jump ship to go to these places that seem to have more freedom, right? And, then it's just going to be the same shit there, maybe even worse, right? And from what you're saying, like this sounds worse. Like that was never an ordinance here about that, right?
Right. So let me explain a little bit about my experience of it. Because yes, I came here, I was guided to come here and felt like this is going to be the free place. I have been really disappointed in seeing how Santa Fe has responded. That being said, I'm really hopeful right now. So we are a democratic state, and like, so I don't know one democratic state that isn't dealing with this on some level, because the infection that has infected that party, like all these people are politicizing it and playing it out. The governor, I don't have a lot of faith in, but we are moving to impeach her. Like there is some, like, Santa Fe is a wild card, it's not like any other state. We're the poorest state in the country. We have the most native population. We're wild and free. And then we also have like the rich people from the East Coast who moved here. We have like Oklahoma, Texas money. Like it's a jumbled thing. But that being said, like we're mobilizing to push back. They're not enforcing it. Like I still haven't worn a mask once. No one has said anything to me, minus getting thrown out of the farmer's market last week. I went to Lake Abiquiu yesterday. I did not see one person wearing a mask. So my sense as I'm connecting with other people here in Santa Fe who are in this conversation, it doesn't feel like it's going to fly. What I'm trying to figure out now is if the mayor, like I said, is he corrupt or is he stupid? And what is the angle to take? I do feel like this is the safe space between here and the top of the Rocky Mountains. Like I'm seeing everyone who's in this conversation who gets it, who's, aligned with creating the new and sovereignty coming here. I think this is it's kind of like all of this. Like my sense is that love has already won, and we're going to need to play this out for the next year and a half, whatever, until it all comes, we even it all out. I do feel positive about New Mexico. I just feel like it's time for me to engage and help steer how this is going to go. And I don't think, my sense because I did watch the replay of the city council meeting, is it's some old people who are misinformed and making decisions out of personal fear. They don't understand what's on the line, and I'm making that clear for them so that they can make a different decision.
Well, I mean, it is, so to what you just said here, and to kind of just finish the thought I was on before, like, I'm being careful, like, I'm eyeing the places that have the most freedom, but also saying, like, look, like, one could say, if you've watched this, like, I've observed this many times, that like there'd be people who'd be invested in the idea of getting Californians to sell their property cheaply here quickly so they could go somewhere else, and then they could scoop it and buy all this property that people left cheaply because they went to Arizona or Texas or somewhere that they thought was freer, and then ultimately it was the same bullshit there. Now that, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot, like, I've watched that play out a couple of times over the years as I've watched, as I've watched things. So I think a lot of this is just kind of like, you were guided to go to New Mexico before all this craziness started. That was
Correct.
obviously where you were supposed to be for that.
Correct.
I kind of feel like wherever you are, when this stuff started going down, for some reason, that's the place you're supposed to be. And don't be so quick to jump ship. Just like right now, you're not, you're staying there, and you're like, I'm going to take control of steering where this, or I'm going to be involved in steering where this goes. And I think that, like, there's something to be said for that. Now, I've noticed the same thing here. Like, they never passed like quite a law or like an ordinance, but they did have these announcements from Garcetti that everybody has to wear a mask every time they leave their house, or they could be fined $1,000, blah, 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 right? And then at the very bottom of the article, where nobody read, like after underneath the ads where they thought people don't look anywhere, there it says, except for when you're outside or exercising or not in large groups or this or that or whatever. So they want to see how many people like just believe whatever they're first told and will do the thing, or how many people, like how many citizens will enforce on their other citizens. Like, can we get them to try and police it and peer pressure into doing them what we want to do, and blah, blah, blah. So I think, like, your observations, right? Like, before you get to, like, obviously none of this is okay. Like, that's a given. But I think a lot of this is just paying as close attention to what they say is happening and what's really happening. Right? Like, what they're projecting is what they want to have happen, and what's actually happening out there in front of your face when you go out. And you're going out and no one is wearing a mask, right? And so they can't arrest all of Santa Fe. The other thing is that I think New Mexico is interesting about is because I don't know what kind of news, what all the news you follow is, but it's been interesting how, like, there's been some like Indian territories and reservations where they've had really strict enforcement, right? Like, it's weird. Like, they've gone farther than the governments have in some cases. And you have this situation of a lot of natives there in Santa Fe. And one of the things I've been observing, even as we watch how people that we know in our personal life respond to this, is people who have Native American ties or certain kinds of indigenous things, some of them seem to be reacting in fear to this, and I'm wondering if there's something baked into their DNA based on how many times things like pandemics or contagions have been used as a bioweapon against them, that, like, it just snaps that reaction, right? Yeah. It's in their DNA in a different way than it is for some other people.
I think that's correct. I think it's an epigenetic activation going on. I also think because Native poverty is totally different from inner city poverty. Yeah. It's a different level of, like, super poor. And so the food, like the diet, is so rife with sugar, with programmable matter, with things that I think, the DARPA folks are messing with. So yeah, I think that's really astute as far as what's going on with the Native community, because I was very shocked. I thought, well, none of the natives are going to stand for this, and we're going to shut this down super quick. And I was really surprised to see them kowtow. Yeah. And the other thing just about where we're supposed to be right now, it's all intuitive. Like all those balls are still up in the air, including about 1,000 metaphysical ones, like these dimensional shifts. So it's a moment, it's not an intellectual, anyone who's making an intellectual choice to leave wherever they are and go somewhere else, I don't really recommend that. I feel like it's completely intuitive as far as when we get the hit and where we're meant to be. And I'm just examining how many people are getting the hit to be between here, Santa Fe, and in the middle of the Rockies, and the things that I've heard about the New Jerusalem being in the Rockies, and how all the people who are coming to this area are attuned to building the new and this dimensional shift. That's what I'm paying attention to. But I could get a hit this afternoon, like get out now, drive to South Dakota. Who knows? It's so moment to moment right now.
Like the thing that's happening for me, like two things. I want to quickly go back to the native thing, and then I'll address the intuitive hits. Someone that I know that is one of the most free in the mind people that I know, period. Super metaphysical, super far out there, all that kind of stuff, is totally into the masks and the germs and this and that kind of thing. Native blood, right? And so I think there is something to that, because it doesn't make sense on so many levels. But
yeah, I just got to chill. I really think you're onto something there.
Yeah, and so I think there's that, and then I think and that is slightly different than this other thing that we're experiencing, both from just the mind-controlled idiots and people, older people, and people who have health issues. So they're scared because this is a different thing. I'm offended by being held hostage by people who never cared about their health or cared about paying attention to what's going on in the world before the last week of February, right? When you and I have been worried about doing the right things for our body and being aware of what's going on for many, many, many years, if not forever, right?
Exactly.
So now people who have spent years getting their immune system to a place that, whether there's a real thing or not a real thing, if it's fake, if it's a bioweapon, if it's a mind control thing, like we're able to deal with it. You know what I mean? And now we're being held hostage by people who ate McDonald's hamburgers and, for their entire life, and didn't discover concern for their health until, this situation.
Exactly.
So the thing going on with the natives is different than that's going on with the general
It is
public.
different than that. And just the other piece that I want to touch in on is that Santa Fe is a hub of progressive health and wellness. It is the number one industry here. And it's another reason why we don't even have high numbers, which we know are fake anyway. But this is a self-responsible wellness community. So it's even more insulting,
Yeah. Well, it's weird. A lot of these wellness communities, something, it's part of that part that's still really caught up in the SJW and this political correctness part that gets, it's the knot is in the same area, right? It kind of thing, how you have a necklace and there's one knot and then there's another one that's really close to it. It's not on the other end of the necklace. So when the knots happen, they all get in that one area and the rest is, right? It's like that. It's it's in that same, it's in that cluster of stuff. And that's why it's hard for them to see clearly or to even understand that this freedom and the diversity that they are claiming to support and respect goes for everything, including different ideas about what is healthy, even though that's supposed to be it's all clustered into the same jumbled block of nonsense.
Yeah, well, it is clustered in the same as far as being fascist and not being for individual freedom and wanting to control everyone because they think that they're superior and they know better. It's just another expression of their own bigotry.
Yeah, and it's just weird the way it goes. It's so counterintuitive to what they say they believe in.
The hypocrisy is nauseating.
Yeah. Okay, and then back to the intuitive piece. Where I'm getting, you were explaining your intuitive hit about what's going on in that region. For me, the biggest thing is this idea of being flexible, of being able to evolve, right? Of maybe spreading yourself out a little bit, have multiple places that you spend time and being able to say, you know what, this feels like this right now. I'm going to go here. I'm going to be here for this time and I'm going to be in this other space, sometimes that's the thing for me is more and I mean this in a totally different way than they do, but diversify the places that I feel comfortable, right? Or the places, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that's That is the ideal way to do it. And the balls are still in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as we shut this down and the scam goes away, that's a great way to do it. If the timeline comes to pass that they do the forced vax crap, then we're not crossing state lines anymore. Then we're picking one place and we're creating community there and we're moving underground invisibly from there.
That's entirely possible. Like, we're not to that space, to that space. And I actually, like, you know, this is one of the things that, like, after the first few initial weeks of like total fear porn from every direction, including the people who are supposed to be more aware in the conspiratorial thing and the mainstream and all that kind of stuff, like, I don't think, and this is just where I don't think there's going to be forced vaccinations. I think it's going to be that, like, where there's certain things you're just not going to be able to participate in. You know, if you you know, so maybe I'm already preparing myself for the fact that air travel may be done for me.
Correct. But it also might be, and again, like, I'm not holding the vision of this coming to pass, but if we go the ID 2020 route, and then to even get a driver's license or to move, different states are going to have different laws. And again, right. I'm holding the vision of us shutting this down.
Yeah.
We still don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. But what just to finish the thought about like diversifying the places that you are or the places you spend time, like, it's really important. Like, we all have some online community here and people are in different places, and to really be like, okay, like, you know, if there's someone that you've always liked that's in a group that you're part of or that you back and forth with on Facebook, figure out where they are. Figure out if that's the place you'd like to spend time. Would they like to spend time in the place that you currently live? And start really getting to know people that are in the different places, like, you know, really having conversations so that you have places to go. They're spread out. It's not, oh, you're not, you know, like, you can kind of use your intuition and be able to go places, even if that isn't where your primary home is. I think that's really important. And then the other thing is this goes for dealing with our health as well, right? Like, I'm really paying a lot of attention to what's going on in the food space along with this, because they're passing all sorts of weird little laws and ordinances.
Did you hear this law where now the FDA can replace ingredients and not tell you about it?
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. We talked about that in our little wellness group the other day. So basically what it is during this time where there's supply chain issues, food producers are like, you know, are allowed to use different ingredients than or what is on the label without changing the label, right? And of course, like, we all know this is all about putting the fake meat into the, you know, instead of the real meat.
Bill Gates' Impossible Burger.
Right. It's about that. So there was that one, and then there was also one passed that now the GMO companies can police themselves and decide whether their organisms need to be tested or not, right?
Because they're so trustworthy and they so have the public well-being in mind.
Yeah, you know, so we you know, like, we're going to have to start being really, really conscious, just like we're going to have to start talking to the people we know online and really getting to know people individually to see if these are people that are your people in different places. Same with our food providers. Like, you actually have to now know the person who works in the produce section at the market that you go to. It's not enough to just think, oh, they say it's an organic market. You need to know the persons that are better to go to the place where the food is actually produced. Know your rancher, know your this and that, and be also figure out how to be flexible and evolve your diet, right? So sometimes you're someplace where it's like, even if it's through intuition, I cannot eat this food that's produced here. There's something off about that. I am only right now eating meat that I get in the mail from the you know, rancher that I know, whatever. Or other places you go and you're staying at someone's house and this person has their own lovely garden that only they've ever grown things in, and you know exactly what it is. And suddenly it's like, all right, I can eat these vegetables. I know what this is, right? And
well, we also need to move into growing our own food and being self-responsible. Like, if it's, and granted, that's a longer term, like, what you're saying makes sense for now. And this is pointing to, we really need to be setting ourselves up like that.
I'm into this idea of, like, maybe, you know how, like, a lot of people, and this goes for part of why, like, carnivore diets gained in popularity, is people who used to be able to eat vegetables now seem to be having some responses to digestion of fruits and vegetables that they didn't. Like, I think one of the things, and this could be actually like a cool evolutionary thing, I don't know why it's happening, but I think that, like, we're actually really supposed to have a relationship with the food we eat. Like, you're supposed to eat the vegetables you grow, not the vegetables that somebody that you didn't know that is working for slave labor rates grows. Like, the vegetables are, the plants are smart. They internalize all the things going on in their environment just like we do. And I think it's entirely possible that, like, they've developed an exoskeleton or a lectin, even the vegetables that didn't normally have those kinds of issues, as like a warning, just like we're doing things to protect ourselves from frequencies or what's going on in the world, they may be doing it as well. They may be communicating to us that, like, hey dude, you're only, it's not that vegetables are poison, it's that eating vegetables that aren't your vegetables are poison, right? Or something like that. Like, so I think that, like, we're getting to this place where, like, our idea of how we communicate with our environment and what interdependency is changing. Interdependency isn't we rely on China for them to supply our food. It shouldn't be that. It should never have been that, really, but it's been that. Interdependency is, like, we communicate with the food that we're eating. We communicate, we spend time in the garden, we talk to it, you know what I mean? Like, like, it really is, I had this, incredible communication with the trees in my backyard the last time I had a psychedelic experience and stuff like that. And there is something to that. And we spend so much time communicating with this ugly technology, but that's, like, beautiful, productive, life-giving technology out there that we don't communicate well enough with. And so, like, that goes to sort of this thing I'm talking about as well, with just sort of evolving how we do things, and that ability to be flexible in your mind and with how you live your life is, I think, going to be, like, that is the great skill, right, to work on attaining right now, I think. And to what you said about the natives, the native poor is different than the inner city poor. Absolutely, it's completely different. Although both have connections to control through food, it's different. But I have a new line of thing I'm pursuing that I'm just going to run it out a little bit. I'm not going to get deep into it here, but through some experiences I've been having as I do the carnivore diet and then sometimes periodically going off of it for a couple of days or a week here and there, I'm starting to understand the psychological effects of carbohydrates on the human mind. So the next piece for me after sugar is programmable matter is, our carbohydrates for control. Right, because both of the all populations that have been subjugated in one way or another, or poor in one way or another, their diet mainly consists of some kind of carbohydrate or another. And I'm starting to recognize that it has a profound effect on the psychology of the human consuming it sometimes. And I'll be making some videos soon to go into that. But I mean, when you talk about the native poor and you talk about, like, the fact that they grew up, they ate certain things, and they're maybe how good or not good for them is still a question. But once the like, outside world came in, suddenly they're eating all of this junk food, right? That just seems to have an even worse effect on them than on the people who brought it into them. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Yeah. And they're eating food that, like, the government is providing.
Government food, right? Yeah, which is always starch heavy. Yeah,
totally. It's like Fritos.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's move into our, the last time we did this, the riots were just sort of, we are just a few days into all of this kind of what is this, like the Black Lives Matter takeover of the United States? Like, I don't know what is, like, if you had to, like, assess, have a name for what's going on here, what would it be?
I mean, it's another realm of the sham show. It is Black Lives. I mean, it's going under the guise of, it's using Black Lives Matter. Like, when I saw the photograph of the giant Black Lives Matter painted across the street from the White House, I just saw George Soros going like this to Donald Trump. That's what I saw. That, and we know that the Clinton Foundation funds Black Lives Matter, and it's bigger than that. I'm just sharing what popped into my mind when I saw that.
Yeah. So
it's the illusion of Black Lives Matter. Right.
Yeah. So what you just said was interesting also, and that the first thing that popped into your mind was George Soros going like this. And this is where, like, in this sort of transition from the CBBS till the BLMBS, like, the thing that's been obvious to me is, in the one arena, they always want us to think it's Bill Gates, and in the other arena, they always want us to think it's George Soros. So there's been, like, a programming, even for us who are super aware of stuff, right? And that is allowing other people and other factions that are doing stuff to operate outside of that, like focus that you know what I mean?
Totally. It's
yeah.
What I get from that is once Bill Gates goes down, and I really believe that he will, and once Hillary goes down, because it's impossible for her not to, that people are going to think that the problem is solved.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So yes, I hear that. And this is pretty like classic George Soros, and we know he's a big player in Black Lives Matter, in the race thing. And we also know that his goal is to destroy America, and he's getting up there in years. So of course he and the Club of Rome boys would pull the crisis. I mean, they were going to pull the crisis now anyway, you know?
Yeah. So this thing that we've been observing going on, like the more like, you know, so I think the last time we did this, it was like a few days in, and like I was in this place where I was trying really hard to hang on to my humanity, right? Like to not just want to think like the absolute worst of everybody, right? To not just be like, to resist the urge to call everyone an absolute mind-controlled sheeple that can't think for themselves or whatever, because like one of the things that like I know there's something that wants me to do that too, right? And so I'm really trying to be measured. So at that point I had only received 2 communications that now I recognize are related to form letters about how you social virtue to keep your business going, right? Like, right. But so I had only received 2. So one was super cringy and I talked about that. And then another was a little bit more heartfelt. And so I was like, I don't know, dude, I'm trying to like, and then in the days that followed after we'd done the show, I proceeded to receive from every online thing I've ever been, like any like subscription I've ever had, any mailing list, any whatever, like basically like the same form letter letting me know what they're, you know, how they've somehow over the last 3 days, they've completely done a personal moral inventory and recognized the errors of their ways. And now their entire business is about this. I mean, if that had happened from 1 or 2, 6 or 7 months ago, it's like, okay, this person's having their own personal come to Jesus moment. It's not the one I have. I don't agree with it, but it's their thing. But the way this is just like, it's like everybody got the form letter, and the form letter told them, now just personalize it a little bit to your thing and then send it out. And I talked about this with Robert in our latest Matrix Mash, the push over the edge for me to where like, I'm like, you know what? Fuck, I'm like, this is just dumb. And it like, you know, I am human. I don't have to try and stay in touch with my humanity. I treat people well, so that I don't have to do that. Was when I received an email from the Culinary Agents, which is like a website for helping people in the high-end restaurant industry find work, that was mushing this all together in a way that was like, okay, we know that a lot of you are now, things are starting to open back up and there's starting to be jobs again, but there may be less jobs than there used to, so you need help. You know, like we're going to do some webinars to help you, you know, put yourself in the best position to get hired. And we have the top 50 Black restaurant owners in the country or whatever who are going to tell you how to get a job. And so it's now this complete, which
right, it's not the most qualified owners. It's
right.
And it's so disempowering. It's so infantilizing for the Black community. I'm really not into it, and I'm glad that you've had this awakening around it. I'm
like,
so happy.
Like first of all, I have not had one interaction with any person of a different race or color that leads me to believe that they think any of these things that we're seeing on TV, right? Like I haven't seen, like I pass people of every race and color and sexuality, whatever, every day in the park, right? The ones who are always assholes are still assholes, and the ones who are always kind are still kind. Like there's not some great change going on in anything. We went to brunch yesterday downtown and had a lovely brunch, and we were probably, at least in the area we were sitting in, most of the restaurant, the only people not of color. Everybody was smiling at us. Everybody was friendly. We were talking to the baby of the people. You know what I mean? So like, this is not like, this is dumb. And these people are not believing. Like the real people, like they don't need you to tell them that now you've had a come to Jesus moment about how you, like, they're not falling for it. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is like, this whole thing is this is just like everything else, more virtue signaling amongst wealthy white liberal people. You know what I mean? And if they have a few, you know, like there's like a few angry, noisy people that may be of other races and colors out there, you know, that are being funded to with some of this crap. But like, this is not this is offensive. Like,
this is super offensive. This isn't about racism. This
No.
is about control. This is not about racism. And Black Lives Matter was created to create racism, to create this setup for what we're living into now. The only people taking the bait, it doesn't have anything to do with color or race. It just has to do with stupidity and a lack of sense of self and a need to virtue signal to get approval from others because you don't know who you are. And I don't mean you, obviously. This isn't a race thing. This is a control thing.
Yeah, this is no, like, the other thing that I saw, so I'm out in Los Angeles, right? And you go everywhere and places are boarded up. Now, a very few amount of them are probably boarded up because there was looting there, but most of them are boarded up because they don't want to be looted. And so all these places that are boarded up because they don't want to be looted have sprayed Black Lives Matter on their board. And I swear to God, I can feel the vibration coming off it. If we just put the right saying on our board, we won't get looted. So all of this is just an act of self-preservation. Everyone is hoping to preserve their business, whether it's an online thing or not, preserve their social status. The whole thing, like, is so gross. Like, it's not possible for, like, let's just say that everything was as bad as they're making it out to be, and the whole country really did need to have this moral inventory and come to Jesus moment. It doesn't happen over the course of 3 days, 5 days, or 2 weeks. This would be a long process. And so this whole thing that, like, they can come out with these letters and change their mission statement. The whole thing is so disgusting and so gross and so infantile. It's like when you were little and you got punished and couldn't do what you couldn't do the thing you wanted to do. And so, like, you immediately, oh, so sorry, and blah, 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 and change your story so that your mom will let you do what you want to do.
Right, it's very adolescent. Like, there's no self-reflection. Okay, so let's break it down. So let's go into it, because Black Lives Matter is the reason why I got thrown out of Reality Sandwich. As soon as it burst onto the scene in 2013, I pitched them a story. This languaging is really bigoted and is really damaging. And they were like, nah, we've taken too much shit from you. We're not going there. But Black Lives Matter was started by two women whose ideological hero is Assata Shakur, who is a Marxist cop killer who escaped to Cuba, where she is now. It says in their mission statement that they are for defunding the police, which has been a democratic socialist strategy for decades, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with racial equality. It also isn't about racial equality. It's about pushing other races down.
It's about them being in charge now. Yeah.
It's also it was started with $3 million worth of funding from George Soros from the get-go. And we know that he doesn't give a shit about racial equality or people or a healthy society or our country. So that's a question mark right there. Let's look at this thing, because the last time you and I talked was before the blackout. The Clinton Foundation has given tens of millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter.
After the blackout. It was right after. Remember, because I was saying you had sent me that.
Oh, right.
Right after. Yeah. But I didn't even completely understand it yet, though, because I don't spend time on Instagram. So I was a little slow on the pickup on that one. But once I got it, I was like, oh God, this is dumb, right?
The largesse of shutting down social media communication on the day that the hearing decided that Hillary Clinton has to testify because there's enough evidence, which the mainstream media still has not reported on any level, and the Clinton Foundation funded this. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to see what's going on. Now, as far as how people are reacting, because of what just went on with the fake virus, 40 million people lost their jobs and businesses are continuing to close. So the whole country is in survival. The whole country is out of balance with their first chakra and they're panicking. So you throw this in, and now you have people going over the top. Plus the fact, the way it's been engineered, right? The way this narrative has been written is that if you're not apologizing for being not Black, then you're the problem. Mm-hmm. And people are so stupid and suggestible that they're taking it, not realizing that they're feeding racism, that they're feeding disempowerment, that they're feeding this division among us. So it's a giant, gross, disgusting psyop.
Totally. Absolutely. And we got into this. So the other day we were just outside reading and having coffee, and Laura's like, we got, Laura and I got into this conversation about, I think this was even her idea, that what is the resonance of Black Lives Matter, BLM? Like we were talking about it in terms of BLM, because that's what you're seeing everywhere, like hashtag BLM. And before BLM was code for Black Lives Matter, it was code for Bureau of Land Management and the Bundy Ranch kind of stuff, right? And so there's something to that, this BLM thing. So we started looking up, I did a search for what is the resonance of BLM, and we got into a conversation about this at Conspiracy Cocktail the other night too. It was pretty interesting. So there's all these articles about, Black Lives Matter, this and that. Should it become a political movement? Do policy. And then at the very bottom of the 10 articles you see now on Google was something about it having to do with nuclear radioactive spectroscopy, and that there is a molecule called a BLM molecule that can bind to certain sites on your DNA. Right? And I was like, okay, one of these things, like all this other stuff is about political stuff, and there's this thing that's really about our genetics in there, how like energy, like right, affects that. So like we know that like the vibration and sound can affect our epigenetics and this and that. Like, is all of this BLMing like changing people's DNA, right? Is it rewriting something about humanity in this way? And is that why it's being pushed so hard? And then Jeff is like, well, Cousin Cherie just did some video about the bellum. Apparently there's like some esoteric or metaphysical entity called the bellum, right? That also sort of matches up to this description as something that can bind to something else. So this is like not just a psyop, but this is a dark magic ritual on levels that like far out and far inside far outside and far inside our bodies.
Yeah, that resonates, that it is. And the more I dig in, the more I research, I'm starting to understand how much of what's going on are various dark magic rituals. So 2 things that I just want to speak to before I get too far away. One about BLM. So back in the earlier days of Burning Man, before it went crazy, before it became a corporation, BLM always referenced to like the lease on the land. And so back in the early 2000s in Burning Man, so that was my automatic association with BLM, was how it had to do with getting access to Black Rock City and that part of the desert. And so for me, it's really tied into that community. And we know how many psyops are run through the Burning Man community. The other piece that I just want to speak to that I didn't speak to when you first started talking about Black Lives Matter is that, one, the conflation with shitty cops and white men, and how that is so much of the Black Lives Matter movement has to do with cops, and cops gets inflated with white people, even though there aren't white people because white isn't a culture. But also the fact that I've seen so many people like reaching out to their Black friends to see if they're okay. And my thing is, this isn't something that happened to Black people. This was a staged event that happened to all people, because this is showing us how sadistic and cruel and abusive the powers that be are, that they don't care about any lives. Like, they'll sacrifice any one of us to drive forward their agenda. So the way I see it is we're all as affected and victimized by that sham, because that's just how psychotic the people running it are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Have you read this article? I pulled it up the other day and started reading it, and then just had time finally to finish reading it this morning. It's on, I found it on Zero Hedge. I'm sending it to you right now in case you haven't seen it. And I'm actually going to link to it when I post this show, because I think this to me is like the best article I've seen. I've actually read a lot of good articles during this whole sham show of one distraction to the next. But this one is, the title of the article is Anonymous Berkeley Professor Shreds BLM Injustice Narrative, Berkeley Responds.
Yeah, Heather Hang posted about, I haven't read it yet, so thank you for sending it to me.
Yeah,
I know Heather Hang and Brett Weinstein are speaking sanity about what's going on.
Okay.
And they, thank God. And I think she posted that today. So I'm excited to read it. But I heard that allegedly no one believes that he wrote it. Have you heard that? I haven't read it to know enough about it. I'm just gossiping.
Like whatever the thing is, if somebody is pretending to be a Berkeley professor so that this gets paid attention to, like, I'm not okay with lying or anything like that. That wasn't the resonance I got with this. Like, I feel like this person probably is some kind of professor or assistant professor or something. The feeling that I got is that this person is probably Asian.
Okay.
When you read tell me if you agree with me, either Asian or like a mixed race person, right? Because they did identify as a person of color. They didn't say what color, but with some of the sensibilities that were shown in the article, it made me feel like they belong to a racial group that is seen as not as marginalized as Black people, but is also sometimes the victim of violence from Black people. I'm not sure. I want to see what you get from it.
I'll read it.
It's so important and so well written. And like, literally, if you don't have to agree with everything this person is saying, but if you can't understand the importance of what this person is saying, you have lost your mind. If you are an intellectual, if you are a college professor, and yes, Dad, and yes, my sister, I'm speaking to you. I'm not even bothering sending you this article because I'm just tired of this argument with you guys. Like, you know, I'm not saying that they never have any fair points, but if they can't recognize the importance to academic integrity and freedom of thought and diversity of opinion that this article, like, no matter who wrote it and why they wrote it and who they sent it to and if it was, you know, put out correctly or whatever, what's being talked about in here is exactly right. And this is the logical extension of, in a more concise and cleanly put way of what happened with Brett Weinstein at Evergreen. And so I'm glad that they're speaking to this because this is the connective thread, right? This is the person who, if he let his identity be known, he would definitely be Brett Weinstein.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's such a well-written article, and I don't, like, you don't have to agree with everything he says to know that what he's saying is right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, I'll link
the
to
other
it.
thing that I mean, as long as it seems like we're talking about Black Lives Matter, so I'm just going to go there.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I find really disturbing about what's going on now is how the leftists who are taking the bait feel like we need to put, you know, defund the police and put the money into Black communities, and here are the Black restaurants that you should be going to right now. And 40 million people just lost their jobs. We really need to be supporting everyone right now. So to create this fragmentation and separation now, when our country has just endured this huge collective trauma and this huge collective financial hit, and to now take that attention and that care and that philanthropy away from so many people because they don't have the right skin color, is really offensive to me.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, it's gross.
It's super gross. And this whole conversation right now, this distraction from, like, and, you know, stop me if I said this before, but I filled out a census thing here in Santa Fe. Do you want to get rid of libraries or do you want to get rid of parks? Because we can't have both. If that's where we're at and it's all offensive to me, then we have way bigger problems than whatever this made up race thing is. Like, it's not a priority right now. Not to mention the barreling down, like, sure, this is a breather right now, but the globalists aren't done with their fuckery on any level. We need to be mobilizing, and we need to be doing whatever is necessary to stop the tyrannical fascist police state technocracy from barreling down upon us. And now everyone's attention is fragmented, and they think the most important thing is taking pictures of themselves next to Black Lives Matter graffiti and posting it on Instagram.
Right, which is almost as stupid as just posting a black box on Instagram and thinking you're helping.
They're both just as stupid. Apparently that black box thing was another big black magic.
Totally, it's the black cube, right? That's like, right, like literally 2 weeks before this started, Jason and I were at this Carl Cox thing right in downtown LA, and there was this black cube diamond thing in the middle of the dance floor, like it was outside near the LA Times building in downtown LA, and we were like, it looked like it was like a centerpiece that everybody was looking at during the show, and it's like, okay, I was waiting for it to do something, and it never was, but that was it. It was part of the start. I would bet that in other cities around the country that there was these black cubes popping up that maybe people didn't notice as well, right, as I did, because I'm just, right, but yes, we're in the huge black cube ritual right now, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So, we actually, I don't think we did a show about it, but we talked about it in our Patreon group. And there was a whole segment where we were showing some of the video about, like, you know, the black cubes. I want to hit on two more things. I want to hit on this, and then anything else you want to hit on. The hypocrisy of like anti-lockdown protests weren't dangerous for coronavirus. Were dangerous for coronavirus, but BLM protests or protests about.
I mean, what do we even say about it? It's so stupid. I mean, that's why I haven't spoken to the BLM thing, because it's just such a dumb sham.
It is dumb, but this whole thing where, like, you know, there's been a couple, I don't think I have any of them open, but there's been some good articles written about this, about, you know, like, if anybody with half a brain cell now will never believe anything said by the CDC, and not even because they were wrong about everything about coronavirus, but because they've politicized it in this way, where literally the health person, the woman, I can't remember what her name was, Jennifer something or whatever, she literally said that, no, the Black Lives Matter protests are not a health threat, because more people die from racism than die from coronavirus. So protesting for that is not, but anybody who doesn't stay at home based on lockdown, it's just like it's
why does anyone listen to the CDC or the World Health Organization anymore? Like, and I get it, the mainstream media has a real big lockdown on that. It's so stupid. No, all it points to is how dumb our fellow brothers and sisters are, or how much, keep in mind, they're brushing their teeth with fluoride, they're eating the standard American processed toxic food GMO diet, they're being bombarded, you know, it's like, I give them a little bit of a break because they don't know what we know, and they're being poisoned and indoctrinated from every angle, and I give the globalist scumbags props for doing such a great job at controlling the masses, that they can run such stupid shams and they still work.
Right. It's embarrassing. It's actually quite embarrassing. But the interesting, so I mentioned this to my father, right? Which I've told this before, multiple degrees, law degree, PhD, master's degree, right? Intelligent man. I brought this up about how, like, it's pretty hypocritical to say that, you know, like, you can protest in the streets for this, but you couldn't protest on the lockdown because you wanted to open your business. He's like, oh, I'll have to consider that. That had never occurred to me, right? And I was just like, I was just, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of the, it's not even like, with some of this stuff, I feel like it's a preference, right? People like prefer one narrative over the other, right? And as stupid and misguided as some of that is, it's like, okay. But this is like, they can't even see. I don't even think that's occurred to anyone's brain.
No, I agree, but we cannot discount the amount of fear they have been bombarded with, and how much cortisol has been running through everyone's system. Because even, like, think back even 100 years ago, or when, you know, they threw smallpox, and they didn't have the media exacerbating it and having these, you know, these stupid celebrities and these retarded talking heads in this hysterical panic riling people up. So when people are riled up and they're in that much fear, they cling even harder to what their oppressors are telling them. So it's been engineered like this. And I just keep, the only way that I'm, you know, this is a learning experience for all of us. And I do, on a larger level, it's intelligently designed and it's divinely designed and it's happening for us. We're not victims to this. So what I'm learning in this is how to be more compassionate and how to be more tolerant. And it is not fair how the populace is being fucked with, but they're being fucked with, and they're being fucked with in a big way. And so I'm bummed that they're this stupid, but they're being manipulated into being this stupid. The people who are manipulating them are not playing fair.
You'll like this. I'm going to pull a gene key into this because I'm on the third gene key, right? And the third gene key is about the chaos. And it's about that actually chaos is perfect. And it should really be reinterpreted as difficulty in the beginning, right? So of this chaotic mess that we're in right now, it actually like is the perfect, it can provide the perfect wellspring of divine order out of it. We're just in that difficulty at the beginning. So like if we sort of reinterpret this as like, oh, this is the horrific end of the United States or you know, whatever it is, and reinterpret it as like, okay, this is the start of something new and it is fucking difficult right now, right? You know, and three comes up, three is it's a factor in my own personal gene key. I don't know what it's called, the diagram that you have or whatever.
Hologenetic profile.
Hologenetic profile. Yeah, there we go. So, but yes, so we're in that stage where we're all we're having our compassion and our tolerance and all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, like we're having to find that balance between, you know, our hearts and our minds and our, you know, all of these kinds of things. But a way to reinterpret this feeling of chaos is this difficulty at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did it. I pulled the gene key. Like,
thanks for bringing the gene keys in. I want to give you like a brownie button.
Oh, yeah. I got kicked out of the brownies.
I mean, who had time with gymnastics?
Yeah, I got kicked out. Yeah. Okay.
Wait, what'd you do?
So I was in the brownies, and I was constantly in a little bit of trouble for not being present at all of the meetings because of gymnastics. But then I did the little ritual where you pass from brownies into juniors. And as soon as that happened, like when I wasn't at the first junior meeting, I was banned from the Girl Scouts. I never did misbehave.
I was right. It was gymnastics.
It was just I wasn't loyal enough to the, you know, whatever nonsense. And there's some weird little rituals they have that were like you spin you in circles while you look at yourself in the reflection in the pool and shit like that. Like I had a few weird experiences at Girl Scout camp as a kid and whatever. So I think they were just like, yeah, we're done with this one. This one's fucking too hard to, you know, like yeah, we did the mind control we were supposed to do, and now it's just too much. So the other thing I wanted to kind of circle to was back to what we talked about. We were talking about intuition in terms of like where you go and diet and things like that, like the food. There's this other thing that is available right now. Like if you can look past all this chaos that we're talking about. Like I had this place we went to brunch the other day. Like we just decided we want to go out to brunch, and, you know, like we almost don't even care what the rules are, you know, whatever. We want to go for a fancy brunch, right? So we went to this place, and we walked in the door, and like it had said, we read an article about this before we went, oh, you kind of have to wear your mask in the beach front, and then when you sit at your table, you don't. But we got up to the front, and it didn't feel like we had to wear our masks, so we kind of really didn't. And this guy who we walked in the front door, went up to walking towards the host stand and whatever. The host is there, but this guy who I immediately perceived to be the manager starts walking towards me. And you know when somebody looks at you like they know you, right? Like he immediately took his mask down, took it off, looked right at me. He's like, nice to see you again. It's been a while, huh? Good to be out, right? And I was like, yeah, I just played along with it, right? Because I've been in the restaurant industry for a long time. And so two things I know, that sometimes I've met some of these people, and other times like it never hurts to have somebody at the restaurant think they know you, right? Because you can get good treatment, blah, 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 or whatever. Or it's just, you know, it can't hurt, right? Unless they're looking at you like with evil eye because they think they know you from something bad, and you know that's not true. It's always best to run with it, right? But he looked at me, and it was such a feeling of familiarity. And I turned to Laura, and I'm like, that guy thinks he knows me. Watch this, right? This guy thinks he knows me. He looks familiar to me, but I don't think I know him. So we go back, we get sat. He immediately comes over and starts telling us about the drinks and ends up buying us some drinks, right? And coming back and sitting down at the table. He just came back at one point and pulls up a chair and sits down at the table, not asking if he can join us or not. And we were like, what is this? He's like, we feel like we know each other. And we went through a bunch of possibilities, and we don't know each other. But he's not falling for any of this crap either, right? And that sense of familiarity, right? Like he just like, we didn't even hardly talk about it. It was just like, we weren't afraid of him. Take your mask off, sit with us and whatever. And we made friends, and, you know, he bought us some drinks, and we're going to go out and have cocktails together sometime. But now I have a new friend that I don't even have to go through all this rigmarole about these things we talk about with. Like, that intuition that he knew me wasn't because we actually know each other. It's because I see you and I know who you are. You're a fucking real person. You're not doing any of this dumb shit. And he proceeded to tell us about how, like, you know, they were one of the first restaurants to be able to reopen and they're doing really well, but there's all these crazy restrictions. But he's like, you know what? I just don't see a point anymore. So I'm starting to leave it up to them. Like, I don't know what the rules are the rules, but like, I tell them, you want to wear it, wear it. If you don't want to wear it, don't wear it. You know what I mean? Like, he's being like, you know, he's not, and it's very, everybody in the restaurant was happy. All the customers were happy. The people who worked there seemed to be happy. It was like, okay, the whole world has not gone totally insane. There are spaces, there are protected little areas and spaces, even in this was in downtown LA. So right at the center of the storm and whatnot. And it's like that, looking in people's eyes and knowing that you know them, like, that's available right now. I've never met this person.
That's always available, A, but B, I think this goes back to what I had messaged you, like, we're shifting into the fifth dimension, whether it's happened or it's happening. Yeah. And that involves a deeper recognition and a knowing for those of us who are holding a certain frequency. Yeah. And I'm experiencing it in my life in my own ways of just, we can sense each other, you know, like I see it in my meditations, and I know this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but I see like all of our hearts connected in the sacred geometric grids. And I feel it so strong because those of us who get it, like, we've been on this mission for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, and we've been social pariahs, and we've gone through all the stuff that we've gone through, and we're operating at a different frequency. We can sense one another at a different frequency, and right now we're all connecting. So I love that happened. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's not into any of this like conspiratorial alternative information. He doesn't need to be. He just gets it. Like, this is fucking nonsense. I don't like him. Literally, he just like, I don't like hand sanitizer. You know what I mean? That's like was good enough for me.
Love him.
Right? But it's just yeah, so it is always available, but like right now, because everyone else is making themselves so obvious in how the dumb stuff, like, just keep your eyes open because the sanity is everywhere. It's just not making all the noise that you know what I mean? Like that the other stuff is. And that's part of the purpose of the mask, is so people can't look me in the eye. And he looked me right in the eye, and that was how we knew. So look people in the eye, see what comes back, you know? But I've heard what you just said about like your meditation and the heart's, I'm hearing this, and everyone has a different language or terminology for how they express this, but I'm hearing lots of this right now. So I think, yeah, it absolutely is.
Because we're splitting, like, regardless of whether or not we believe it or whether our 3D minds are grokking it, the worlds are splitting. And the 3D zombies who are buying into it, they get to live out whatever gross shit they get to live out. We're creating something new, and there is an interweaving. So I'm not surprised that there's a pocket in LA. You know, I'm sure there are lots of pockets in LA, and there are lots of pockets everywhere. And that's another reason why I agree with you as far as like, don't necessarily use your intellect to ditch LA to go to Texas because your mind thinks it's going to be safe. It's much more subtle and nuanced right now about where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to connect with, and what is continuing to unfold and show us.
Yeah, and this split is happening, but it's not just like, okay, this one's here and this one's there. It's much more nuanced and interwoven. And like, there's been a lot of people talking about like personal Mandela effects recently, and that's evidence that there's all these different layers of reality sort of interwoven, and it's just kind of where you're vibrating at the moment. Like, something appeared in our neighbor's backyard the other day that was not there before. So we're in some kind of different reality where there's an extra structure in their backyard, like a fully erected, done, finished structure that was not there the day before, right? So it's like, you know, there's interesting stuff like that happening, and you know, it's
totally
all that kind of stuff. I want to circle back to one thing you said that I didn't explore, but it goes to something I want to say, even having to do with these pockets. You said you don't know what it is, but something is going on in Taos, right? Like,
something is going on in Taos there. And so my friend, I'll just give you a little overview. I had something similar to what you just had with your friend, where I met this guy once in 2017. That's not true. I met him twice. I met him once in 2016, 2017, haven't heard from him. And I get a message from him on Saturday that he's driving back to LA through Crestone. Am I available to hang out? It coincided, the timing was perfect, and he's like us. He knows everything. I didn't know that he knew everything. He didn't know I knew everything. And it was just like, we got to hang out and have this, okay, everything's gonna be okay. We're normal. We can relax with one another. And he was saying, he's like, what's up with Taos? Driving through Taos felt really weird. And he didn't know any of the specifics of what's been going on in Taos. he just tapped into it on a feeling level. They're also having a ton of suicides. Like more people than ever are throwing themselves off the gorge and into the river. So that's all I got. What did you want to ask about it?
Well, it seems like there are some areas, and this may be even the areas where like the looting popped off or the rioting, because some of the areas seemed unusual, right, compared to what we've seen in the past.
I think it's a couple things. One, again, this is a test. This is their test run. So much of what they're, it's why it's so arbitrary. You're like, why would Santa Fe do that? They're probably seeing, how are they going to respond? How is this going to go down? So part of it is like, what's going on there. But I think the other piece is this black magic, and it has to do with geomancy and grids and geometry.
Vortexes and like little pockets of things, because it's like weird. Like one block will be totally looted and the next block will be like totally left alone, right? So either like they've been instructed, both things. They've definitely been instructed to go to these specific places and do this, right? And like it isn't really just about protecting this person's private property. It really is about, okay, there's a vein of energy. It's like, when they're mining gold, there's like the vein where it is, where you want to, that's the place you want to really go. You don't want to go like 20 a mile to the right of that. You want to go right there. Right? So there's these little energetic portions, and I think we've always thought of it, like this particular city is a portal. I think it's much more nuanced than that. It's a fucking street corner, like it, just like when you're in any downtowns, like some street corners have like all the crazy homeless people who talk to themselves on that particular street corner.
It's like Hollywood Highland, like whatever is going on Hollywood Highland, even before they built that nightmare of a vortex. You can feel the energy, like, I don't want to be here, know?
Hollywood. I don't like Hollywood Boulevard at all. Like that whole area right there where like the part that people always want to go to when they visit California for the first time. I'm just like, I don't understand this shit at all.
Supposedly the Cahuenga Pass is where like the bloodiest, most violent, horrible battles of the Mexican-American War took place. We're so like myopic that we only think about our here and now. We don't think of what these different pockets of land have been through, what they were intended for.
Well, Michael Wan and I in our thing, we got into talking about the Hollywood Bowl, right? And what a portal and vortex that was for like a lot of various things. I mean, I used to go, I think you and I have talked about this before, but like obviously we go to concerts there and events, but like as a child, I went to like all these like multicultural summer camp kind of things there and day programs and whatnot, right? And like that's, it's just odd, right? There's this place right in the middle of the city that
that whole area is really magical. Like you have the Vedanta Center right there, which is where Adida attained enlightenment. You have the Crotona, which was Krishnamurti's first temple in Beechwood, where you also have the Annie Besant Lodge, where you also have the Scientology Celebrity Center, which is only a couple blocks away from where you were, or I don't know if you were born at Cedars of Lebanon, which is Scientology now, but like that whole realm is high spiritual energy. Those part of the hills.
Of course I was born at Cedars of Lebanon. Right? But that Hollywood Bowl, just the shape, like even like the structures that are there, it's built to sort of like hold certain energies or suck certain.
Think of that big cross that you look at during the shows. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's just like that. So that's there, and then that's the stage faces towards the direction where Hollywood and Highland is. So that's like amplification of energy in a certain direction. I mean, all like the weirdest, like during my drug years, all of the weirdest drug shit that I ever got into in terms of like weird energetic things happening and seeing disturbing stuff, it was always in that area of Hollywood. You know what I mean? It was never...
Well, that area was so seedy until they dumped all that money in. But all that money, it's very similar to Venice. Like for me, Venice will always feel violent and scary and dissonant. And I don't care how much money they put into it and how many Teslas are thrown on top of it. That's a gross, gritty, grimy part of town.
Yeah, so taking us back to Taos, because you said there was like police like encircled sort of around it.
Apparently completely surrounding the Pueblo. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of Taos as a place where there would be like a lot of riots, except for you think about like.
No, because it's so tiny, and they took like Antifa got bussed into Taos, but not Santa Fe and not Albuquerque.
But there's so here like a lot of the riots and looting was happening like on Rodeo Drive, right? That has
Good
high-end stuff, right? Beverly Hills and all that crap. Think about the energy of some of those stores in Taos that have all those like enormous crystals that look like they come from like another planet.
There's like one. I mean, Taos is so small, you know. It's like yes, that one store that has the crystals.
No, like, but the last time I was there, like, I feel like I went into like multiple, right? And they're all in the same area, right?
Yeah, there's only that one little tiny.
Yeah, but think of it in terms of like depending on what the energy of the place is, right? Rodeo Drive is pretty small area, right? Is pretty small, and there's a certain kind of like high-end or worshipped kind of material that is there, whether it be jewelry or whether it be clothing or whatever. But for the people in Taos, like the drive energy is towards that kind of stuff.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense, and that's why I'm feeling like it has to do with some like larger, you know, military plan / it's just a random test, and they're like, okay, let's just, you know, Taos, you know,
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, or even like
it doesn't make sense though. It's not logical to me why Taos has this stuff going on that we don't.
Like the National Guard was in like Santa Monica and Beverly Hills and stuff like that. It was just like it's just weird how this went down, right? Like it's
not intelligently coordinated, which is great, which I love because everything they do it kind of badly. Like they're not really being successful. No. I don't think they're going to pull it off. Like the more we go into it, I'm just waiting for them. Okay, they're going to pull another false flag. They're going to mess that one up too.
Right. Like sort of on purpose, but sort of not. You know what I mean?
Correct. Like they do it on purpose because they want the dumb. It also makes it for when we comment on how dumb it is, we sound crazy.
Right.
And then we're discredited.
They want us to find the shit that will make somebody go, "Oh, this is all fake," and right? Like they bake like every possible layer into the cake, right?
Exactly. You know, exactly. I've become obsessed with Bain and Company, who, you know, they're the ones who are designing and strategizing all of this.
Yeah.
And I become obsessed, and I have this fantasy of, like, I want to pitch them on a consulting gig. I want to go there. I want to go inside and really, you know, like meet these diabolical psychopaths who are designing all of this. And I went onto their Twitter feed just to feel into their energy. And I just saw one post and I had so much cortisol flood my body. It was just so evil, so immediately. And I realized, let's just keep this to the fantasy realms. I'm not going to infiltrate Bain and Company. Yeah. That is bad stuff.
I think that's why that doesn't happen, right? That is why there haven't been, like, I've thought about it before, like, right? Like, I've thought about, should I ever, like, one of the things I considered infiltrating CrossFit, right? When I was having my little issue about CrossFit, when I, you know, whatever my conspiracy was, what was going on at CrossFit, right? I was like, maybe I should infiltrate CrossFit, right? And so, like, I was even, you know, but the vibration there is so icky and so low that I just can't. And so, like, they know that. They, like, it's the same kind of, right? Like,
it would be a suicide mission. Like, they would for sure kill me. It would have to be someone who would be willing to die for it. And I also think, I mean, they have the CIA, they're not going to let people like you and me in there to sniff around their shit. Like they actually know what's going on.
The CrossFit one felt attainable that way. Like, and at the time I was thinking of doing it, it was a much smaller media presence. Not that my media presence is huge, but it was much smaller even then than, you know, but yeah, no, that's why it doesn't happen, because even if a person could pull it off in terms of logistics, they can't in terms of vibration. It's just like there's no, like, either you will die, like it'll just kill you, the awful vibration, or if that vibration is so bad, it would turn you into one of them. You know?
Totally. Yeah, totally. It definitely felt like a not safe to even dip a toe there. Like,
that's part of why they feel safe doing what they're doing, because they know
they
that
feel they're untouchable.
Yeah.
But there's so many, I mean, I'm really, obviously I go back and forth between, like, it's hopeless and we can do it. You know, I'm prone to extremes that way. And I'm feeling more and more hopeful.
Good.
I really am. And I feel like something shifted over the weekend where like we got ahead of it. And I don't know what it is. You know, maybe I am prone to idealism and delusional thinking. You know, there are a lot of us who are waking up. You know, there are a lot of people with big mouths who get it. So
yeah, no, I think it's just, and we talked about this, what we did at Conspiracy Cocktail this week was like, it is obvious that actually the true warfare, it isn't really the riots on the street or the virus, it's narrative warfare. And if they can suck you in to paying more attention to their narratives than to whatever your script you're writing for your own life is, then that's the battle, right? So it isn't that we shouldn't watch and pay attention and be aware on a certain level, analyze what's going on externally. But like when you learn to start to like, the weight has to go more towards paying attention to what you are doing as opposed to what everyone else is doing. And as long as you're like in the positive in terms of focusing on your own like story that you're writing for yourself, building your own mystery, your life, whatever, however your epic journey, whatever you feel it is, then you're good. But if they can get you sucked into either believing in one of their narratives or just being so bombarded and confused by all of the various narratives that's all you're looking at, and like you can't even notice that, oh, when I look outside, actually none of that's happening in my immediate space, so why am I so concerned with that? So that's what it really is just like learning to put things in their proper place.
totally.
Right? Not give something more attention than it deserves. And to really, like that guy interviewed earlier this summer, or earlier when this all started, Jacob Lieberman, and his whole thing is like, deal with what is right in front of you. Right? If there's something that needs doing, do that and let it lead you to the next thing to do and the next thing to do, right? Don't get 10 steps out or worry about the thing that's across the street or around the corner. Like, is everything okay right in front of you? Cool. Proceed with whatever next needs to be done. Like it sounds so simple, and a lot of people are really offended by what he was saying because he didn't seem to be taking in some of the like panic and the largesse of this. But truthfully, like so far, if I didn't know that there was all this stuff going on out there, right, and I didn't, whether it be the virus or whatever, or the riots, other than the fact that people are wearing masks, I don't see any of that stuff on the streets here, right?
I see it in the people's psychology. Like the trauma is very real, and how people are avoiding one another's eye contact and are mostly demoralized. Like that is happening. I am noticing that. I also hear what you're saying. Like, it sounds so bad when I'm paying attention to social media, or even like I freaked out about this mask thing, and then I went into town and it's the same as it always is.
Right. Like what I'm saying is, sure, yes, when you go out to the stores, you see there's some of that, and even but like on my street, and even for the most part, like where I exercise and stuff like that, like it's not there, right? And so that is my more immediate reality, and it deserves far more weight than the one that somebody tells me exists somewhere else.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Is there anything else you want to hit on before we wrap it up? I really like this one.
Yeah. Today was super fun. No, I feel good and complete. I'm so happy you came around on the Black Lives Matter thing. And I'm so happy, just what you said, as far as like, I know I'm a good person. I know my humanity. I don't need to take these added steps to demonstrate it for other people. So yay.
Yeah, I think, I'm like, I try and be, balanced and measured and stuff, and the things that I say, but like, and I'm not perfect. I'm still working on myself, and I still struggle like with this fact that like two of the people that are closest to me that I love very much are deeply entrenched on in this idea, in this racial agitation. You know what I mean? And so like, I don't because I have to be measured in how I deal with my relationship with them, right? Like I also, when these things come together, when like the public is arguing over the same things that are the arguments in my own personal relationships, it's like, okay, like I really want to think about what I'm doing, but at a certain point, this is bullshit. Like I know that the things that my dad and my sister believe about me are not true, and it goes out here too. You know what I mean? So it's just
totally. And I respect your process around it, and I think it's Like, I think it's beautiful, and I think it fills in your humanity and your character and your compassion, because you're not just like, it's easier for me to just throw it away because I'm not in close relationship with those people. And sometimes, you've known me when I have been, and I think there's something very, it's really good for growth to have those relationships, and for us to question what we think we know. All of us would be wise to continue to question what we think we know. So I love your process around it. And I think, in a sense, your dad and your sister that way, like, of course, like, they're here for your evolution. They're here for your growth. And you really take advantage of that. You really make the most of that.
Well, thank you. Awesome. All right, guys. So this wraps it up. And you can find Dani at danikatz.com. You can find me on Facebook at Emily Moyer, or technobrat21@gmail.com, or on Off Planet Media on Patreon. We will see you guys next time. Ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.